Oyeyemi Ajayi, thank you for the background report. Once again, just to remind you of our focus, we're looking at 40% remittances, of course, from tertiary institutions in the country into the federal coffers. And we have our guests all seated. Professor Yakubu Aboki Ochefu is the Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellors, and he's right here in the studio with us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
We also have right here in our studio Dr. Abdul Malik Mohammed Durungwa. He is the Education Development Expert and Member, Governing Board, NOC University in Kaduna. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for having us here.
Okay, Claire, we have invited representative from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, and we are still expecting their representative to join us on the program for discussion this morning. But joining us via Zoom from Benin is Professor Lilian Salami. She's the Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, and Chair Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigeria Universities. Prof, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
All right, Chair. Let's start from you, Professor Salami. Kindly make sense of the whole of this, because I don't seem to understand, the context, within which this IGR is taken from.
Thank you very much. If I get you, your audio is a little bit shaky, but if I get you, you're talking about IGR. And I think the problem that we have here is that we've not been able to really define what IGR is to the institution or to the government agencies that are sending us these policies. What we have in the university isn't IGR. We actually have services rendered, and these services are what we charge the students. And then we right now are really dealing with insufficient, even the school charges that the students pay can't really take us anywhere. So we are grappling with problems of insufficient funds. IGR, for our own definition, is those monies that are not paid or charged students. Right now, most universities don't have that. And so what we're dealing with is we are just surviving on what comes from federal government, which we all know isn't quite sufficient, as well as what the students are paying. So really, the case of IGR shouldn't really be applied to the universities, because we really don't have IGR. Like I said, what we're dealing with is student paying charges for rendered services to them.
Thank you, Professor Salami, for giving us an explanation there. But let's come back to the studio where we have Professor Yakubu Aboki Ochefu. And I want to ask, you are the Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellor of Nigeria Universities. What exactly is the stand of the Vice Chancellors on these remittance?
Let me first of all say good morning to my boss, Professor Salami. She's my chairman. And when the circular came from the Office of the Accountant General and was quoting the Finance Act, we took a critical look at it and saw that there were discrepancies in what the Finance Act is saying and what the circular is also saying. The Finance Act says very clearly that federal agencies that are funded by government should remit 40% of whatever surpluses that they declare at the end of the financial year. And so we were a bit alarmed that how do you determine what is a surplus if you are going to do deductions at source? And it didn't quite add up for us. And like the chairman has said, how have you even defined what IGR is? A few examples were given. For example, if you ask contractors to pay for registration, that is calculated as an IGR. Some universities don't even because how many contractors will register, to provide services in a university? So that doesn't, probably at the end of every year, it comes to a few thousands. If you sell application forms, they calculate that as IGR. And then of course, if you have commercial activities, some universities do have commercial activities that they render. But what federal government is looking at is not these services. It is looking at the fees, the user charges, not like my chairman said, the user charges that students pay for services to the university. So if a student pays 20,000 naira for accommodation, the logic as defined by the circular is that 40% of that amount should be remitted to federal government. What the universities are saying is that even that 20,000 naira we are charging them is heavily subsidized, And so if you take 40%, it means that we will not be able to render the service. And because of the nature and character of the students, they've paid for that service, they expect to be given that service. You are setting up the universities for major problems going down the line if you implement this activity.
Okay. I just like to bring in Dr. Durungwa. Again, he has explained the content of the circular. Now, one thorny area is in the nomenclature of IGR. Professor Salami has just given us an explanation, but I'm still in the woods. What is IGR? I mean, by definition, internally generated revenue. And this is what, MDAs are supposed to remit into the federal coffers, 40%. Please, within the tertiary institutions, within the education sector, what does IGR constitute?
Thank you very much for this wonderful time, and I'm happy to be here and talking about this very wonderful development in the educational sector in Nigeria. Before I answer that question, let me bring our knowledge to one very important thing, that education as it is in this country, Nigeria, in fact, government have not been fair to the educational sector, because a society or a group of people are only dictated by the education they have. If you don't educate your people very well or enlighten them very well, definitely they will go the wrong way. And there are only two approaches to education worldwide. It's either you go the social demand approach or you go to the economic demand approach. Nigeria have done best, very well in the social demand by making everybody go into school. Now, if you reach a certain point and you don't determine the economic, benefit or the economic aspect of it, you go into serious trouble. And that is what we are now seriously facing. A lot of people want to go to schools in Nigeria, more especially universities. Let me tell you categorically that right now in Nigeria, we have every year, we have over 2 million, Nigerian, young Nigerians that are in these higher institutions. And most of these 2 million that I am talking about are children of the poor. They are children of downtrodden. Some of them hardly even fit. Some of them barely even go to the school itself. They do some petty trading. Some of them come and hawk in the street before they can get money to go to school. And then, if you look at these universities, what is the subvention or what are the contributions that government itself is giving to the universities? And that is why the universities are going down every day. Because the services the universities render in the university are no longer serviceable because they don't have the fund to service those universities. And that is the reason why recently or last year, almost every institution increased their tuition fee. Who is going to pay this tuition fee? Is the student. You are still going back to this poor student, because most of the children of the, I quote, the children of the, haves or the children of the big people in Nigeria, they don't go to these public schools. All of them are in private schools. How much do a private school charge? They are not even talking about the private schools in Nigeria. They are talking about public schools. The schools that the government themselves supposed to take responsibility of. Now they are asking the same schools to remit money to them. I don't know whether maybe, and they are saying they are going to deduct it from source. How do you deduct that money from the source? You are talking about internal generated revenue. I don't think there is any university in Nigeria that is generating an internal generated revenue. They don't. what they do, like the professor said, they are just charging students at least that can be able to make sure that what they provide for that particular child, they are able to at least see what they can be able to do.
Is this your interpretation of government's understanding of IGR within the university?
That is their thinking. The money, these tuition fees that the universities are. Thank you.
There's no tuition.
There are no tuition even.
There's no tuition. The federal government says no tuition.
No tuition.
Yes.
So how much do they pay now for all those charges?
See, there's an average student now in the federal university, maybe with the little increase, before they pay less than 50,000. Yeah. But now, because of the pressure on services, even to run diesel, gas, in the university now, it's a serious issue. You can't operate a university without light. How much is diesel?
When you say higher institutions are operating tuition free, how do you mean?
It's the government that says so.
No. But what is the actual state? Is it really true that Nigerian students are not paying?
They are not paying tuition fee. They are not
paying tuition fee. There's no federal university that
all
pays.
Federal universities and tertiary institutions that either Federal College of Education, Federal Polytechnic, university that is federal, and even some state-owned institutions. There are federal-owned institutions, there are state-owned institutions. These are the ones we classify as public institutions. These public institutions, they don't pay tuition fee. What they pay is students pay some charges just to make
hostels, medical
accommodation,
that's
medical,
hostels, accommodation,
even cleaning
medical,
the toilet where the children are going to.
Library,
is it not services?
ICT, sports, ID
there
card,
are so many things.
Result verification. These are all charges.
These are all charges.
Yes, about 14 of them. And the most expensive is usually the hostel fee, and the hostel fee is charged so that you can provide bulbs in the rooms, so you can service the toilets, so that you can make sure that water is running, Then the electricity, the cost of diesel, because if you are either running on diesel or you are running on
electricity, and both of them are not easy to find.
Companies, federal government has tried to see if they can move the university power situation to an off-grid situation so that they can better manage. There's no federal university that can guarantee 24 hours electricity in Nigeria.
You know why I'm asking,
Yes.
Demola, sorry, why I'm really on this issue of free tuition is because recently we had students
Protested.
Yes.
Students, protesting.
That is the point. It's not tuition.
Increase in
tuition fee. It is a federal government policy. Yes, the federal government policy.
Services.
Yes.
See,
they were protesting the services, not the tuition.
Excuse me, VC. See, let me tell you something. When you want to run a particular institution, there are a lot of things that are embedded in that institution that you must service them. Like he has said, you have water, you must provide water. You must provide light. You must make sure that the environment is clean. You can't leave the environment littering.
Security
of the particular environment is very important.
Yes. And internet access.
So there are the internet, and
toilet facilities,
a lot of things. So these particular facilities, if the government that is provide or establish institutions, how much do they give that institution to service these things?
I think
the money is inadequate.
I think it's better to put that question to Professor Salami.
I want to actually ask Professor Salami.
So you see, lastly, at the end of the day, the university have to devise a means of making sure that they don't perform below standard. And to provide the standard, they want to keep the standard. They must make sure that they at least charge some little services fee from this student. It's not tuition fee. How can you say a student paid only 50,000 naira, for example, to maintain all these things? How much is even the tariff for light now? How much do you pay for water? So all these things put together is what the universities are charging. And you are now saying, from these little services that the university are charging again, you want them to carry 40% and give you, then it means you are grounding the whole institution. It's grounded.
Okay.
Okay. I think we really need to understand the charges, first of all, to be able to know whether the universities are making surpluses, or not.
That takes me to the next question, which I want to ask Professor Salami. Professor Salami, if you have been following the discussion, I want to find out, because there have been a lot of reactions from government agencies, especially federal universities, on these remittance of 40%. Can you tell us what exactly is the current financial state of tertiary institutions in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Indeed, we are almost at a point of collapse, if there is a better word for that. Now, the institution, and I will give you examples, those charges that the students are paying can't take us anywhere. We try as much as possible to stretch to the point of the break, the elasticity break point. Now, let me just give you an example. When I came on board about 4 years ago, to buy a carton of duplicating paper was only 3,500. In about 6 or about that, it went to 7,000. And we're all like, how can we conduct exam? How can we carry out functions? Even when we are trying to go e-platform, where most of our communications and dealings in the universities are done online rather than paper. But examinations are conducted. Others that we really cannot for now go 100% paperless are still on. So right as I speak to you, from 3,500, that same box or carton of duplicating paper is sold at 30,000. Now the students, what they pay for examination, it's something that can't take you. For instance, in my university, I have over 60,000 students. If you put that together, it costs me just for the OMR sheets. Sometimes I spend up to 47 million just to get that. This isn't talking about booklets that each student must get and use in answering the examination. So at that point already, we are running into deficit. We cannot sustain the university on such a deficit. Now, I don't want to overflow the case of electricity, and I think a lot of persons have discussed this. It's a common knowledge amongst us here in Nigeria. Let me take a different subhead now. Staffing, for instance. The University of Benin has not been given employment since 2016. So what we have done to keep the system running and to meet our mandate, which of course is to produce graduates that are of quality, category, and then that can survive not only nationally, but internationally, should be able to compete with their peers. So what have we done? We have now gone into having adjunct lecturers. As I speak to you today, the university has over 345 adjunct lecturers that must be paid by the university, not contractors, because we have not been given the right for employment over the years. Now, this is a system that is revolving. And so what must happen is, as people get old and retire, we must be able to build from the under, which we have not been able to do in the past 8 years. Now, we also talked about, the case of, can we have contract staff? If we do, we have to pay. Security, as I speak to you today, I have almost 200 personnel on my security, and that I have to pay from these same charges that the students are getting. So something has to pay for something. So we charge the student. We still find a little bit to stretch. And so what you see in the system is we are constantly running into deficit. Like I said, I don't want to go into the light issue because that is a discussion for a whole day. I pay almost 880 million per month just to run electricity. And then that is excluding diesel. Diesel, if I add that, what I pay a month goes to almost about 130 million to keep the university lit. So that again is a huge area. And then you talk about, lecturers now, because we want to have international outlook, we're beginning to look at lecturers in diaspora who join the student and teach the student via Zoom. These are expensive. We have to pay them in dollars. We have to do the conversion and all of that. So there is no university, and I can almost say that as the chair, and then we have discussion at our level. that has any surplus. In fact, I think we are all running in deficit. We are all, indebted in one way or the other. And so the fact that universities, we must continue to reiterate the fact that we are not revenue generation, centers, but what we do is that we render services that the students are paying for that cannot even meet the demands that we need to offer to these students if we must not compromise quality students that are graduates. And so that's where we are. And I can give you all the items, item by item. The drugs, we must give them, healthcare services must be rendered to the students. Students come into our health centers. Now, even the drugs that we used to buy, cartons for less than 20,000, now we're paying almost 100,000 for the same drugs. And we cannot now say that when students are sick, that they shouldn't go to health centers. We must treat them. And so we have issues in the university, and again, tailored around, funding issues. And so for anyone to think that we have surpluses, I think that is just not realistic.
Very much, Prof. Salami, for giving us a deep insight into that. But the question now is, who determines surplus, or what determines surplus, according to the Act of that's 2020, right? I'm correct.
Yes.
So, and if we are not sure of this surplus, what will be the implication of this remittance on the quality of education in the universities, Professor Mohammed? Oh, Yakub, sorry.
Who determines surplus is the person who is providing the service. Because it's line by line item, and it comes into your treasury account. So you know exactly that a student who has been admitted to read a degree in computer science pays, in a particular university, pays 150 million. The Office of the Accountant General is the one that manages the cost of paying for the lecturers and the non-academic, non-teaching staff of the universities. So they know exactly how much they pay as far as supporting the universities to pay for the staff is concerned. It is the bursar and the vice chancellor that handles the day-to-day cost estimates, like as she has itemized. And it is very clear, if you do your numbers, it is very clear that there is no way that you have 130 million naira for power, one line item alone, and the approved budget for overheads to the federal university in 1 year is usually 250 million, and not all of it is drawn down, because not all of it is cash backed. And that can barely take you for 2 months if you are running at 130 million per month. So who determines the surplus is very clear. Government knows how much she's giving the universities to support for subvention, for overheads, and for paying of their salaries. And then it is easy to crunch the numbers on how much it takes to run these universities from day to day. Universities are 24-hour operations, 365 days. Even when the students are not on campus, universities must run. So it's easy to crunch those numbers to see that there is no surplus whatsoever, So if you are now going to deduct it at source, it means that you just want to do the simple arithmetic. If 1 billion comes into as fees and services, you take 400 million and everybody goes home happy. And you leave vice chancellors to bear their cross, And what the vice chancellors will do is to transfer that cost back to the students. So if I know federal government is going to take 400 million, I'll just add 400 million on top of what is my minimum balance. And the parents and the students are the ones that are going to suffer. And they will now turn around and blame the universities. Not fair.
So what's the implication of this on the tertiary education?
She has said it. She has said it. You want, once you underfund tertiary institutions, you are throwing stones in the marketplace, because the standards will fall. Somebody will pay the price. It will cascade across the entire ecosystem.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Durungwa, Abdulmalik Durungwa, and thank you, Dr. Ochefu. for, giving me this a copy of the Finance Act, Section 62 of the Finance Act, 2020. And by the way, this is not the first time. This portion of the Finance Act, was implemented last year, 2023, when it was 20%. It was just up this year by another 20%, with making it 40%. So the 22.1 says, notwithstanding the provisions of any written law governing the corporation, each corporation shall establish a general reserve fund and shall allocate thereto at the end of each financial year 1/5 of its operating surplus for the year. 1/5 of its operating surplus for the year, provided that the cost to revenue ratio of each corporation shall not exceed 50% of, or such other ratio as the minister may approve. And then the two of that seg of 62 says the balance of the operating surplus shall be paid to the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation in accordance with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, on a quarterly basis. But my question is, has the tertiary institutions been fulfilling this clause of the Financial Act before now?
That I may leave it to people like the vice chancellors, because they understand, how much it takes them to run a particular institution and what balance do they even have. Have they been able to even implement that one, or even this one that is now?
No, you're a member of the governing board of North University. So the
it's a private university. That's what I'm saying.
Private university. Okay, let me.
Yes. I was only trying to, maybe before he answered that, because you people were asking the implication of this.
Yes.
Yes, we will
The
come.
implication.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, we will
Yeah,
come.
okay,
we will still come. Let's just understand.
Okay.
Yes. What
maybe
your
you throw the
arguments.
question to,
What your
Professor
arguments.
Salami.
Yes.
Maybe
What your
Professor-
arguments. Yes. Let's
maybe
just
Professor
understand
Salami will-
Yeah.
your arguments are and the points you are coming
Is
from.
it not that?
Whether, because I don't understand whether Professor Salami, I'm sure you're listening. I don't understand the context of your argument. Are you arguing that you're not generating any IGR? Are you also arguing that you're not making surpluses? Or are you saying you have not been remitting, in accordance with this section 62 of the Financial Act?
I think just like he said, that we're repeating this ourselves here. We have just said that there is no way, even as we're standing today, that we can survive if this continues, if somebody doesn't come to our rescue. And now to even imagine that we have surpluses, I think that is just overflowing the issue. There is no way that universities will have surpluses after all the expenditure, and then at the end of the day, and that is where you get your 40% deducted. It doesn't even come into play here. It doesn't. And that's why I said, I hope, we are not overflogging the issue of, the surpluses. We don't have that at all. It doesn't even come. I want to dare if any universities will tell me that they are not indebted in terms of, the running costs of the universities. And almost everyone will tell you that. Now, most of our buildings, especially the federal institutions, my university has been in existence for 54 years about. And most of the buildings we have now, but for TEDFund, thank God for their intervention, are just as old. And so we expect them to really, become obsolete, they dilapidate, and then we have to continue to develop these because these structures are still needed. Now, to maintain some of those structures, because they are so old, cost the university an arm and a leg. But we must continue to run this. Again, I continue to emphasize the fact that we cannot allow all these challenges to actually play on the quality of the students that we graduate. And so we're trying every means and everywhere. Some of us have taken to, getting to the alumni all the time to come to our rescue. And they've been doing that, thank God, in University of Benin. So the case of surplus doesn't even come into the discussion. Yes, I know that is the government's position. We are also aware of the fact that education is a very, very, expensive and capital intensive. Having said that, but somebody has to pay for services. And whatever the levels that we want to take this, whether it is free, whether it is for payment, somebody has to pay for the services that are rendered. And that's where we are.
And to get certain clarifications on those issues so we can make progress. But again, I know that the universities are not revenue generating institutions, but you do also present your budgetary provisions at the end of each financial year. Is there any manner in which probably profits are also indicated, expenditures and revenue generated and profits are also indicated, thereby these are latest increase in the remittances expected from tertiary institutions?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Like I said, the audio, it's maybe one of them, maybe the General can answer that, but I really didn't get that, unless if you want to.
Sorry about that. I'm just asking, and I'm just wondering if there is any way in which probably during your budgeting process there are indications that universities are making profits or are generating revenues that could attract government attention there.
I think, the TSA actually allows them to see what universities are generating and expenditure. Like for us at the CVC, just a few weeks ago when we met over this issue, that we said, look, let's have our spreadsheet. And that will tell our story better, where we have the income and then we have the expenditure. And let us now interpret and see whether we have any column where we have excesses. And again, just again to reiterate the fact that that isn't happening, not right now. I tell you, again, I have stated that earlier on, that education isn't cheap. Education is quite capital intensive. I get, like my SD has said, University of Benin gets 228 million for overhead for one academic year. That, from my discussion, would only be able to pay just electricity to supply light for 2 months. Now, what leaves the university? And that's, of course, assuming that that money is paid. But, it has to be spread over the year because it is for one academic year or one, the annual period. And so you don't get even that sometimes. 3-4 months, you may not get. This year, I think we've only gotten about 2-3 months of our overheads. So universities can't even, survival really is by luck, mere luck that we're still here. So we really have problems. We have challenges in the system.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Salami, for your thoughts. But let's come back to Dr. Mohammed. You were going to speak on the implications of this on the quality of education in Nigeria. The remittance, if it's so, what do you think would be the implications?
Let me say here that, honestly speaking, I must first of all, thank most of the these federal institutions' management team, because they must have been thinking outside the box to survive the serious, rising cost of the education services that they provide. Because even cleaning alone of the university, cleaning the class alone is money. And the implication here is this. One, if government cannot provide subvention to these particular institutions, it means the university have to, or the institution has to, make sure that it finds a way out. And the only way out is to increase charges for the same students that are coming to that institution. And I have told you the kind of student that goes to those institutions. They are most of the children of the vulnerable people in the society. And if they cannot afford, what happens? That's the biggest implication. What happens? They drop out. They leave the school. Where do they go to? They begin to disturb the society. And that's why we're having the high rising cost of crime. And these are people who are young and very energetic at that particular time. They're supposed to be in the university, but they cannot afford to pay. So what do? So this is one of the biggest implications. Let's even forget about the implication of the standard of the quality of education that they are even supposed to get. Because in these services that they are rendering, like they have said, there are no much academic staffs that will be able to take care of, the learning process. You have to pay. And if you want to get the quality of a particular staff, who, if you are lucky, he is still in Nigeria, that he has not gone to either Ghana, or he has not run to Uganda, or he is not in Kenya. Most of our Nigerian, very, very bright and intelligent chaps that are supposed to be in the institutions, they have left the country because you can't pay them. So if you manage that the government cannot longer employ, like she has said, in her university, for how many years? About 8 years now, they have not employed. So what do? They hire the people they think they can be able to. Where do you get the money to hire them? It's still part of the money that these students are paying for the services they are rendering. So if at the end of the day, you are not getting money from the government, the services that you are rendering here, the government are also saying that at source, even before they give you the money they're supposed to send to you, they have deducted that particular amount. So it means definitely they are beginning to strangulate you. And by the time they strangulate you, you also go and strangulate, the student. The student too will go back home. Since their parents have nothing to do, they will go and strangulate. If they don't have, what do they resort to stealing? And the society is something else. I think government need to look at this particular policy that they have put on ground very, very critically. At the end of the day, I was telling somebody, I said, look, if government want to insist on this, the best option then is to look, as far as we are concerned, we have reached a stage that education itself, we government cannot be able to handle it. Let it be privatized.
That's where I was going.
If a student want to pay, let him go to the institution like a private institution. Pay whatever you want to pay to get the education.
The issue of autonomy.
Yes. Does this amplify the call for universities' autonomy? Because I'm just looking at Professor Salami's statistics figures. 222 million subvention to service 60,000 students.
Madam,
one of the most
this 200 million that they are saying, they are not giving it to you one day.
Yes.
It is spread over the whole 12 months. And sometimes you even spend the whole year, you get only for 2 months or 3 months.
And now what the university is generating to augment that.
To complement.
You are asking 40% of that.
Of that.
Yeah. So you give me this, you now indirectly
you
take
are
away
even
that.
taking it from the source. Taking from the source means, as far as I'm concerned, I know how much I'm supposed to give you for the whole year. I will calculate 40% and keep, and give you the rest. You know how to survive.
So does this amplify the call for universities' autonomy?
It's federal government that has come out to say that they are moving towards full autonomy for the universities. If you look at the law that establishes federal universities, this circular that has come out from the Office of the Accountant General's office is even illegal.
Yeah.
So,
in what sense?
In the sense that the law establishing federal universities has a clause there that says, irrespective of whatever comes out as circulars and things like that, it does not apply to federal universities because they are autonomous entities in their own right.
But has
the
academic staff union of university taken
Of course, they've taken up. As well as taking it up, everybody has taken up, and it's not just a university matter, just like he said. It's tertiary institutions, And so the matter has been taken up by everybody because they know that it is a death blow to tertiary, the operations of tertiary institutions. But let me take you back. The Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly often has the oversight functions to scrutinize university revenues or revenues of tertiary institutions or federal universities. And they usually go line by line in terms of these items and try to ask, how much profit are you making from production of ID cards that you are charging the students 2,000 naira? So if University of Benin has 60,000 students, 2,000 times 60,000 is so much, it means that you are making a profit. That is the type of logic that is presented. And the university will tell them, say, look, the ID card is not for all the students, but for newly admitted students. So your numbers will come down from 60,000 to like about 5,000, 6,000. So do the maths. Does it add up? So that sense that universities must be hiding their profits is what has led us to say, look, let us develop a template, a template, and show what comes in, what we spend. And since you are the one that is monitoring our accounts, you're now able to conclude to say so. So that all the stakeholders will come and meet to discuss these issues. Because National Assembly has its own perspectives as far as their oversight functions are concerned. Office of the Accountant General has its own perspective. The Federal Inland Revenue Service has its own perspective, and then the whole issue of nomenclature. You say user charge, we say revenue. There's no accounting head that mentions revenue. So we need to define, like you asked in the beginning of this session, what revenue, what is IGR, what is it. So the stakeholders need to come together with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of the Finance, the regulatory body, the National Universities Commission. So let us sit down and look at these numbers empirically and critically. Before it was 25%, now they jack it up to 40% in the context of rising costs that Professor Salami just mentioned. So costs are rising, the user charges are stationary, and then you want to take 40%. So it's a situation. The way forward for us is for all the stakeholders to come together and let us analyze these numbers, crunch them so that we are all on the same page. And ultimately, you say, okay, fine, federal government, you are done with supporting the school, because what federal government is doing now is to pay the salaries of federal university, tertiary workers of tertiary institutions, and then give them some overheads, interest or something, So you can now go forward and say, okay, of course the tertiary institutions get support from TED Fund, like Professor Salami mentioned. They also get support from the likes of NCC, PTDF, and all these other intervening agencies who, through their social corporate responsibility, provide some support to these institutions. So federal government will come out and say, okay, this is what we want to do going forward. In 2024, from national planning, we believe that the country needs 2,000 doctors, 2,000 engineers, 2,000 nurses. Define what your requirements are, and that you can afford to pay the fees of this number of students. Write a check to the universities as the cost of paying full sponsorship for the students that you have identified using your own means. And then the universities now know what to do thereafter. States can come in, local governments can come in, alumni associations can come in, the donor agencies, communities, the Abdul Samad Foundation, Dangote, all of those can come in to support, and somehow, somewhere, we'll get the system up and running, Otherwise, we'll continue to bleed, producing a system that is now networked globally, and not being able to make our mark as far as the global scheme of things are concerned.
Thank you very much, Professor Yakub. We'll call for break now, but Professor Salami, in your line of discussion earlier, you said something has to pay for something, and that brings me to the next question, which is, how do we strike a balance between internally generated revenue in universities and quality of education? That will be after the break. Stay with us.
Our commitment to the values, the creed of dedication, patriotism, and commitment to the value of this country, it is extremely important that we have a change of mindset for the sake of our country. Not for us, but for our children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the inheritors of tomorrow.
Some Something new is about to hit your imagination of TV. A brand new sundial with StarTime's inbuilt technology. New TV innovation with an inbuilt decoder that connects you to both StarTime's antenna and satellite signal. StarTime Sundial TV, you can enjoy over 300 local and international channels, 1 month StarTime's highest bouquet for free, automatic system update. More benefits, more affordable. StarTimes Sundial TV is available in all StarTimes branches and dealers countrywide. StarTimes Inside, entertainment inbuilt.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Entertainment, show, go TV na enjoyment. 65 channels there for you. What's up, master? 80 channels, sorry. I'm super. Where get better, where you want to. Better entertainment, make you show. Super Plus, now the new package. We get everything for super. Cause all he Premier League, La Liga, Syria, Disney Channel, Studio Universal and True.
On Top Go TV, now you get the remote with better enjoyment for your fingertips. Go TV, love it.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress. Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand, and it is the woman that does that.
Sportybet sponsors coverage of the Italian Serie A.
You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA. Our discussion is still on the 40% remittance from the tertiary institutions in the country. And the last, before we went on break, I was asking Professor Salami. Professor Salami, you're still with us. Okay, my question is, how do we strike balance between internally generated revenue and quality of education? If you visit most of the universities these days, especially, in Lagos, for instance, you find out that there are so many commercial activities going on. Most of the halls have been let out. The open spaces are being used for event centers and all that. And one of the professors rose up one day and said, look, this is going to cause a lot of distraction. How do we have a quality education in this type of environment? So you are the Vice Chancellor. How do you strike a balance between, generating revenue and getting quality education in the universities?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, let me educate us here a little bit. Quality, we have regulatory body, NUC, whose mandate is to ensure every 5 years that the quality does not go down for any program, but instead they come in to assess, and for, where we have strengths, they ask us to continue with those and consolidate. Where we have weaknesses, again, they highlight those and actually advise on ways of, meeting up with the areas that they have dictated. And so we are constantly, assessed in terms of quality. Now we also have other bodies, professional bodies, who from time to time also say, look, for nurses to practice, we must ensure that these and these and these are met. And if these are met, then of course, we can then induct your nurses to become practitioners. So we're constantly, only 2 months ago, for instance, the UK Quality Assurance visited the University of Benin. And that, of course, is to allow us have international students come in once we get accreditation. And we are very sure, because I think we met all the requirements that they demanded. So that we have some of these little, if I want to take your word, distractions. And I don't think that any university would actually compromise the quality of the students. Sometimes some of these activities are actually just to meet up with some of those little expenses. But there is no way, for instance, parties in the halls, I don't have any of that in my university, but thank God for those who may have, that can help them pay up some of the bills, can distract, because I think we are focused, we are committed, we are dedicated, and we are constantly visited by these regulatory bodies. The major one, like I have said, is NUC, and then the professional bodies. So there is no way. But in terms of, if you're not even looking at the IGR, that governments or other bodies are funding the universities better, of course, inputs will determine output. So there should be, even if you don't have an equilibrium here, but it's not a case of where the input doesn't come in and you expect to have a better output. So we think that if the universities' funding is much better than where we are today, we will, of course, up our games. But I continue to emphasize the fact that we do not allow our graduates out there. So when I hear sometimes one brush is used to paint everyone, we don't have, graduates that are employable. And then I ask myself, or I ask those who are arguing on that point, what happens when our students leave our shores and they're doing exceptionally well? Is it that something went, somebody did something to their gray matter? No. So we cannot judge the training that we have now, that we don't actually have quality input into our training. Yes, we have challenges, and we are trying to deal with those challenges. Not that those challenges are not almost back-breaking, but we are here, we are committed, we are dedicated, and that's what our commitment is, that we must produce quality graduates.
Professor Salami, thank you. Always, your points are always enlightening. Thank you. But let's come back here, and I'd like to bring in the Professor Ochefu into this conversation. Truth be told, I know some of the Nigerian universities are really going through, challenging times, but there are also, few others, that are thinking out of the box, to find innovative ways of augmenting their resources. Federal government partially funds the higher institutions, which means that those, institutions are expected to also, think out of the woods to augment it. So is there anything that prevents the higher institutions, especially our public universities, from also engaging in a PPP model, to generate resources such that we don't always rely on the paltry subventions that come in?
They are already doing so. They are already doing so. Most of the hostels that you see springing up in public universities are being done under PPP arrangements. Most of the sports complexes that you see springing up in the public institutions are being done under PPP arrangement. Most of the hotels and conference centers that you see are also being done under PPP arrangements. So it's not as if universities are not on their own trying to see how they can diversify their revenue base. But the fundamentals also need to be noted, that these are social enterprises. when you run a social enterprise, your return on investment is not calculated on the same basis as when you run a commercial enterprise. And that is why if you go to any university guest house, the rates are more cheaper than the regular DSS. If you go to rent their halls, they are a lot more affordable because they are classified as social enterprises, you know. And so the return on investment in terms of profits that you calculate is really not there. It's, I mean, 3, 4, 5, max 7% that you get on that return on investment. When they produce water on their campus, University of Abuja water, you know, compared to what is sold outside, you know, it's like you operating in a barracks. There's an understanding that this environment is not an affluent environment. So whatever service that you are producing must be commensurate to your understanding of that environment. Our environment is students.
Yes. So are you
students don't
asking,
have money. So we produce water for them. We sell it at an affordable price.
That is noted. Yes. Are you now asking, you as a body of, you know, the vice chancellors, committee of vice chancellors, what are your pleas now? Are you asking for an exemption, outright exemption,
yes,
or a stay on the initial 20%?
We're asking for an exemption on the 40%, that the 25% that was being charged, we were struggling to meet these obligations. So when you now increase it to 40% against the backdrop of rising costs,
that's
it means that you are telling somebody to stop operations. So let us stay action on this and then come back and crunch the numbers so that we can better understand where the logic is coming from. There may be some federal government funded establishments that don't have the type of operational costs that universities carry. So you cannot lump tertiary institutions into one pot as the likes of the big corporations, federal government corporations, you know, that don't carry this type of social costs. You know, so that is what we're asking.
I think Professor Salami was just nodding.
Yes, in fact, I want to ask, the next question I want to ask is, I'll throw it at Professor Salami. Many people have argued that this issue of remittance would not have arisen if universities' authorities are being carried along adequately in discussion. I just want to find out, are universities' authorities, carried along in decision making adequately?
Well, I think, like the SG has earlier on said, most of these decisions are just thrown to the universities. And so what we want to do, which of course the CVC has proposed, is let's have a roundtable discussion where everyone, those stakeholders, actually come to an agreement. Like he just said, the 25%, most universities, we can't even meet up with that. So we're all running behind, remitting the 25%. And now you upped it to 40. So once we get to the roundtable and we discuss ways of, assisting the universities, I'm sure even the 25%, we may have to even jettison that and really see how we can work and get the system running. But also just to throw in here that a lot of universities are collaborating with other universities internationally, whether even in Africa and beyond. And that is what CVC has been doing over the past, is to see how we can strengthen training by training our own staff, by also sending our students to these universities, causes that it brings lots of networking. It also strengthens us in terms of skills. So our students, we graduate our students, not only experts in the proven or chosen area of specialization, but also they have skills that can actually make them work beyond seeking the white collar types of jobs. So we're doing all of that. Universities are on their oars in that area. Lots and lots of collaboration. It's ongoing. So I think that's where we are right now.
Yes, let me bring Dr. Durungwa. Again, the students' loan, was supposed to help the students, overcome some challenges in the. How might this affect that provision?
I don't know. I don't know how it will go. First, let them start implementing the student loan. Let us see how it will help. But first of all, if you want to give a student loan, there must be a kind of how do you or what is the amount that you want to give that student. It must be able to take the student for the whole stretch of, some students spend up to 7 years in the university. Some spend at least the 4 years, like you have gone in from 100 level, you graduate at the end of at least 400 level. But there are students,
if there is no strike.
If there is no strike. And most of this strike is generated. What generates strike is the inability to cope with the system itself. If, for example, this body of lecturers, this body of management staff that are servicing the institution can no longer bear some things, they will have to opt out and voice out that, look, we can no longer do this at this rate. Like right now, the high cost, what the professor is saying, Professor Lillian, the high rising cost of things. A lecturer to kick his car from the house going to the office, he know how much fuel he needs, and how much is he going to pay. So these are things that will eventually affect the services. But like I was trying to say the other time, if the federal government really want, this system to work, or let them even get the 40% or whatever from these universities, there are so many policies that they can put in place. In the first place, most of the huge contract they give in this country, there is consultancy, services and whatever embedded in this contract. They can consult these universities and say, look, instead of us hiring, experts, these same experts are from the university. We are giving this university this particular consultancy, this thing. So that they now know that as far as they are concerned, this university has been given a contract. So as such, the 40% out of whatever you make, you remit it back. And it will still come back in one way or the other, because it's government. But at the end of the day, if this student loan stand the test of time, are you saying that this same student loan you are giving to student, you are collecting it back in another way? Because the 40% may still come back from the same student. A student have taken a loan to go and make sure that he get education, because the institution has increased the money that he was supposed to pay, and you have taken a loan from the government to go and pay for that services. By the time you pay the same money, the government are also saying again that the institution should pick that money and send back to it.
So it's like giving it in the right hand,
and you're
collecting
from the left hand. So what I'm trying to say here is this. Honestly speaking, like they have said, but the government, in all the departments that are in charge of these higher institutions, let them come together, understand the context and the content of what actually you want to do. Then you now say, okay, this is the reason why we want to do this. What is your opinion on this? What is your opinion? By the time you carry people along in what you want to do, they will understand it. They will make sure that even at the implementation stage, they know the reason why you are asking this.
And if that round table,
yes,
there is no agreement, there is no convergence.
Yes.
Is it something that you might get involved?
I always believe that when you sit down on a round table and the real people are there, and all of them are also, they have the capacity, they will be able to understand whether this thing is going to work out or is not going to work out.
So what you are subscribing for now is a broader national conversation.
By the time they come to find out that, look, this thing cannot be able to work, then let them design another alternative on how to handle the issue of this tertiary institutions.
So we do hope
but
that this
as far as this 40%,
strike.
I don't see this 40% standing, not even standing the test of time. It cannot even stand. Okay. Because the things are going now.
Yeah. The current Minister of Education was a former Vice Chancellor.
Professor Tahir.
Was DG of law school. So he understands the dynamics of what is going on. And he has put in place a committee to design a roadmap on some of these issues. And we're expecting that roadmap will come out very soon. And critical to that roadmap is the issue of funding of tertiary institutions. And in the stakeholders meeting that we held, that the Minister of Education held, a lot of creative ideas on where federal government can get money from to fund education was proposed. So it now comes back to, will the government have the political will to tap into those sources and drive education? We all know that in this knowledge age that we are in, education is a critical variable. The amount of education that your people have, the amount of research and innovation that you fund translates into benefits across the board. So, and he raised the point whether you jokingly made the point whether it will lead to another strike. I've said it on this program before that there's a trust issue between government, federal government especially, and the unions, because over and over and over, whenever there's an agreement, federal government is the first to break that agreement. So there's a trust issue. So if you don't address the trust deficit that has been there, you cannot come to an agreement on these issues. But I believe very strongly that the leadership of the Ministry of Education and the NUC, as presently constituted, know of these trust issues and are working very hard to remedy them. That is why the roundtable that we are calling for will bring all the stakeholders, National Assembly, Office of the Accountant General, the unions, the accounting bodies, because they will be able to say, look, from our own understanding, this thing is not wrong. So let us agree on a template.
Thank you very much, Professor Yakub Aboki Ochefo, Secretary General Committee of Vice Chancellor of Nigerian Universities. Thank you so much for your for the conversation this morning. It's been very profound. Also, I want to thank Dr. Abdulmalik Mohammed Durungwa, Education Development Experts and Member Governing Board, NOC University. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Also via Zoom, we had Professor Lillian Salami, who is the Chair Committee of Vice Chancellor of Nigerian Universities. Thank you very much, Madam, for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. We now take a sports update.
The camp of the Super Eagles in Uyo opened on Monday ahead of the 2026 World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Zimbabwe, as the invited players will begin to troop in on the back of the impressive performances for their respective club sides. Nigeria will take on Lesotho on Thursday, November 16th in their first game of the series at the Godswill Akpabio Stadium.